Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my FXmovies.20 channel? Thank you so much. That they create an indelible impact on. The day Zay unexpectedly entered my room, it was an ordinary afternoon. My husband, Adil, was at work and Zayn, his son from a prior marriage, had recently returned after a distressing separation. Since Zayn's return, we have exercised caution in our interactions to prevent the resurgence of any previous tensions. I was in my room trying on a dress for an upcoming event when I decided to change into something else. The door opened while I was changing. Standing in my pants, I thought, are you subscribed to my channel so I can continue providing you with captivating, authentic narratives? Additionally, remember to view this video until the end and appreciate it, as the narrative will be pretty engaging. Kindly click the like button to convey your endorsement. Maya, have you seen Zay? Adil's voice was interrupted. Zayn paused in the doorway, his eyes widening. I inhaled sharply and swiftly sought an object to obscure myself. Zayn! I shouted, but he swiftly turned away, nearly stumbling as the door slammed shut, leaving me standing there. Zayn's homecoming, marked by embarrassment and uncertainty, had unsettled me. It was odd. All suggestion Zayn requires temporary accommodation was a proposition made one evening, while he hardly glanced up from his phone. You don't object, correct? This did not surprise me, considering Adil's propensity to make decisions without contemplating the consequences. Yet it still appeared peculiar that he did so without prior consultation with me. Regrettably, I was unable to decline. Zayn had consistently exhibited charm but with an air of aloofness, resulting in a polite yet superficial relationship. However, his presence here served as a persistent reminder of Adil's past, rendering the scenario uncomfortable. Zayn was unquestionably attractive. At the age of 25, he possessed Adil's black hair and a robust jawline, yet his eyes exhibited a gentler and more attentive quality. He bore himself with serene assurance, rendering his recent anguish all the more surprising when he betrayed my trust. Zayn disclosed one evening during dinner in Adil's absence. I endeavored to maintain a light-hearted talk, but Zayn's candor surprised me. I apologize, I instructed Zayn not to be. He dismissed this matter. It transpired one Wednesday afternoon when Zayn was expected to be out conducting errands. I was in my room trying on dresses for an impending charity event. However, the dress did not fit as I remembered. I sighed and tossed it onto the bed. Standing there in my bra and panties, I searched for an alternative when the door opened. Maya, have you seen Zay? His speech was immediately silenced as his sight absorbed the scene. I became immobile. My palm rested on the hanger as his gaze shifted between me and the floor. His cheeks flushed a deep crimson, and he turned abruptly, nearly toppling a light fixture. I express my apologies, he stammered while retreating. Zayn gasped and seized a robe as the door slammed shut, leaving me standing there with my heart racing, well aware of the incident that had just transpired. For the rest of the day, I deliberately avoided him. I stayed in my room fighting busyness. However, I could not focus on anything. The recollection of his astonished expression tortured me, and each time I contemplated it, a wave of embarrassment washed over me. We experienced considerable stress during dinner. Did you do those errands today? I inquired, attempting to appear nonchalant. Yes, Zayn said, avoiding eye contact. OD, oblivious to the discomfort, peered between us as he ate from his plate. I suggested to Zayn that he should take some time off to reflect, which is an excellent idea, I responded. However, my voice was very high. Zayn gazed upward, his expression enigmatic. I appreciate your hospitality, he stated. I shall not linger longer than required. Do not be absurd, Adil replied, rejecting the proposal. While your family endured subsequent days filled with distress, every interaction with Zayn felt strained, as if we were both attempting to avoid crossing an invisible line. He refrained from being alone with me, and I convinced myself it was for the best. Despite my attempts to erase the incident from my mind, I found myself contemplating it more often than desired. One evening, I observed him gazing at me. His gaze, though brief, from across the room lingered sufficiently to induce a flutter in my tummy. I briefly averted my gaze, attempting to avoid observation. Nonetheless, the moment lingered, and it was not long before I discerned alterations in his conduct. He began returning home early and allocating more time to communal spaces. One night, I found him in the kitchen, leaning against the counter and holding a glass of water. "Can't sleep?" I inquired, maintaining a light tone. He shrugged, responding, "Something like that." We stood in silence for a minute, the only sound being the hum of the refrigerator. He quietly apologized for the other day. "You did not need to apologize," I replied promptly. "I shouldn't have just stepped in," he said, his eyes fixed on the floor. "It was an accident," I explained softly, urging him to forget about it. He looked up, our gazes meeting. "Is this what you desire?" The question astonished me. I was uncertain how to respond. "It is for the best," I ultimately conceded. He nodded. Nonetheless, his expression indicated a lack of complete conviction. This culminated one evening when a customer reached out to warn him of his late work schedule. At that moment, Zane entered as I was in the living room perusing a magazine. He hesitated at the threshold, uncertain. He inquired whether to stay or depart, expressing a desire to watch anything on television. I agreed, discarding the magazine, and he took a seat beside me. We noted a tranquil atmosphere. Nonetheless, the air between us was charged with unexpressed animosity. Our hands briefly made contact while reaching for the remote, and I felt an electric sensation as he swiftly retracted his hand, his face flushing pink. "Apologies," he muttered. "It is acceptable," I stated, my voice quivering as the moment elapsed, yet it imparted a residual feeling of possibility, which we both disregarded. A few nights later, I remained awake long past midnight. The house was still, except for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock. I arose from bed and proceeded to the kitchen to prepare tea, only to find Zahn already present. He was seated at the table, holding a mug of coffee. The warm light from the under-cabinet illumination cast shadows on his face, rendering him appear older than his 25 years. "Can't sleep either?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. He looked up, startled, and offered a faint smile. "Something like that." I prepared myself a cup of tea and took a seat across from him. For a brief moment, we sat in silence until he unexpectedly broke it. "Have you ever felt stuck?" he inquired, his voice quiet and calm. "Stuck?" I said, turning my head. "You're merely going through the motions," he observed, gazing into his coffee. "Conforming to societal expectations while failing to authentically live for oneself." His comment impacted me more profoundly than I anticipated. I halted prior to affirming. I responded softly. He frequently glanced upward, his attention directed at me more often than I would choose to acknowledge. "What actions will you take on this matter?" "I am uncertain." I acknowledge that I have devoted considerable time prioritizing others. This residence represents significant worth. I never contemplate my desires. Zane's gaze was unwavering. "It may be time for you to address." His comments lingered in the atmosphere between us like a challenge I doubted my ability to confront. Following that night, our dynamic transformed. It began subtly with an extended look, a handshake in the hallway. Zane paid me a visit one afternoon while I was pruning roses in the garden. He inquired for assistance, crouching beside me. "Are you knowledgeable with the process of pruning a rose bush?" I jested, and he responded with a smile, stating that he was unaware. I laughed and passed him the scissors. "I trust you will not destroy it while collaborating." I had a sense of tranquility that I had not felt in years. Zane's presence anchored me in unforeseen manners. I noted his proficiency as I witnessed him delicately prune a branch. "It is merely the commencement," he smiled. "No, seriously," I responded. "You possess a discerning eye for detail." He regarded me, his expression softening. "Perhaps I learned it from observing you." The compliment caught me off guard, leaving me momentarily speechless. Later that evening, as we tidied up after dinner, our hands inadvertently brushed while reaching for the same dish. This fleeting contact sent a jolt through me, recalling the tension that had been developing between us. "Sorry," Z mumbled, quickly retracting his hand. "It's fine," I replied, my voice quivering. He hesitated, before speaking again, murmuring while gazing intently. As I looked up, I disregarded the palpable tension between us, certain that circumstances would inevitably change with time. The disparities between Z and me became increasingly evident. We could no longer conceal them. The mansion, once a refuge, now resembled a seething cauldron of secrets. Ultimately, the inevitable transpired one morning when Adil confronted me in the kitchen. His complexion was ashen, and his hands quivered as he retrieved his phone to provide verification of the events that transpired. "I am aware of the ongoing situation," Adil persisted, his voice laden with astonishment and fury. "How long has this been occurring?" I was unable to face his gaze. "Months," I murmured, tears cascading down my cheeks. Adil's face flushed a deep crimson with wrath. "For months I've been endeavoring to create this for us." "You have been." His voice faltered, and I discerned the torment in his eyes. Yet it was too late. Zayn entered at that moment, his expression stiffening as he surveyed the environment. "This is not all her fault," he stated gently yet assertively. "Do not shield her," Adil yelled, directing his fury toward Z. "You were intended to be my son. You have betrayed me." Zayn responded assertively, stating that he did not intend for this to occur. "However, I have a profound affection for her. The arrangement was extraordinary. Do you consider this to be love? This is selfishness." The dispute escalated rapidly, with accusations exchanged while I remained ensnared in the center, powerless. Adil ultimately shouted, "Get out! Please leave my house, both of you." "Adil," I implored, although he distanced himself from me with a resolute expression, indicating that he did not wish to hear that I had made my decision. Zayn and I silently packed our possessions, the burden of our departure palpable. As I placed my bag in the car and glanced back at the house, it no longer appeared to be a home. It was merely my former residence. "Are you confident of this?" I interrogated Zayn as we entered the vehicle. He did not respond promptly, maintaining his focus on the path ahead. "I am uncertain." I gently accepted the heaviness of this uncertainty on my chest. Upon our departure, my phone vibrated. Laura transmitted a message including a link to a social network post. The post contained screenshots of the correspondence between Zayn and me, eliciting a swift and severe reaction. Friends and relatives distanced themselves from me. Their evaluation was harsh and merciless, and a divorce petition was submitted within days. They deserted me, compelling me to reconstruct my devastated existence. Zayn endeavored to assist me, although he was unable to shield me from the tempest. The weight of our decision became evident over time. The tensions among the fissures in our relationships were hard to ignore. One evening, as we sat in the little apartment we had leased, Zayn gave me a serious glance. "Does not align with your desires," he stated softly. I gazed at him, tears accumulating in my eyes. "It is not what you desired either." Zayn stood and approached the door. He paused to glance back at me. "I will always care for you," he muttered softly, "although we cannot continue in that manner." Following his departure in the subsequent months, I strove to rehabilitate my existence. Those surrounding me murmured and passed judgment while reflecting on my shortcomings. I experienced a sense of clarity during moments of tranquility. For the first time in years, I began to contemplate my own desires independent of Adele or Zayn. In retrospect, I acknowledged that while I could not alter the past, I could derive lessons from it, and perhaps, just perhaps, I might discover a path forward. The weeks following Z's departure were the most challenging of my existence. The apartment was profoundly silent in his absence, and the burden of my losses pressed upon me incessantly. Adele's absence, as anticipated, resulted in a profound void. Friends I thought I could depend on had disappeared, their judgment too burdensome to mask with courteous conversation. However, I could not permit myself to linger in the initial phase of reconstruction, which was uncomfortable yet necessary. I obtained a position at a local art supply store, where I spent my days between vibrant paints and unblemished canvases, both symbolizing potential yet hardly utilized. Maya was the initial individual to make contact. She reached out to me one morning and proposed a coffee meeting. Upon her arrival, her tone was more benevolent than previously, yet her look remained wary. "I am not here to admonish you," she inserted discreetly, "although I wish to ascertain your well-being." I experienced indecision contemplating my response. "I am uncertain of my admission, however, I am endeavoring to be." Maya nodded, her expression solemn. Months later, as the wounds began to heal, a knock on my door disrupted the fragile tranquility I had attained. Upon opening it, I was taken aback. A man stood before me, appearing older than I remembered. His face was weathered, yet his presence remained formidable. The tension between us was evident as he stood there, scrutinizing my face for indications of alteration. "Can we converse?" Adil queried, his voice steady. I remained oddly composed and stepped aside to permit his entry. Nonetheless, the ambience was laden with implicit communications. He remained standing at the window, gazing out at the street. "I initially believed I would despise you," he stated. I sat on the couch, my hands awkwardly intertwined in my lap, reflecting on what you did and the damage caused. "Let me finish," he replied, turning to face me. "I anticipated loathing you, yet now I am overwhelmed with sorrow for what we could have become." His remark impacted me more profoundly than any action I could have taken, yet I had no intention of causing him distress. However, I did not intend to. "Because you harm," I articulated my thoughts. With a quivering voice, I comprehend that he responded with a voice laden with anguish. However, this does not simplify matters. We conversed for hours, reminiscing about significant events from our marriage that we had previously disregarded, which now felt pivotal. By the time he left, our anger had diminished, and we had arrived at a tranquil accord. It was not forgiveness, but it was a foundation I could depend upon. Z's departure engendered an indescribable void, and he expressed regret for his actions. Did he still regard me as I perceived him? One evening, as I departed the art supply store, I found a note tucked beneath my windscreen wiper, and my heart raced upon recognizing the handwriting. The letter opened with, "I believe that departing would simplify matters, although it has not. I continue to contemplate you and our relationship. I am curious if you have progressed. I trust you have attended to your well-being. Zane." The letter remained unsigned and was not required to be. I perused it multiple times, each word provoking a spectrum of emotions: relief, sorrow, and a modicum of selfish hope that I had not been overlooked. Motivated by the letter, I recommenced painting. Initially, it served merely as a means to occupy my solitude, a diversion from the tumult in my mind. However, as the canvases became vibrant with color, I sensed a fragment of myself re-emerge, one that I had not even acknowledged was absent until that moment. Maya visited one day. She observed the unforeseen surge of creativity, gazed at the paintings on the walls, and remarked, "These are extraordinary. You ought to demonstrate that." "I am not, indeed." I experience hesitation. "Do not question your abilities," said Maya. "You possess something valuable to disseminate." 1 year subsequent to Zane's departure, serendipity reintroduced him into my life on the opening of my exhibition. Upon observing him from across the room, he appeared older, yet the allure remained palpable. He murmured softly as he approached, "Z." I replied, my heart racing. We lingered for a while, the tumult in the room fading into the background. "You accomplished it," he remarked, gesturing to the paintings around us. "I had to," I replied, my voice resolute. He nodded, a smile beginning to emerge at the corners of his mouth. "I take pride in your accomplishments." We conversed for hours that night, discussing many topics until the gallery was vacant. The silence between us was imbued with mutual comprehension. Despite the pain it caused, Zane's departure and his absence from town seemed to mark the end of a chapter that I will always treasure. As I stood in my studio surrounded by the colors and textures of my new life, I realized that although the past would always be a part of me, it would not define me. And for the first time in years I felt at peace.